sketchbook, sketchbook. Here's my sketchbook. I can show it to you if you wanna have a look. Sketchbook, sketchbook. Here's my sketchbook. And now I will stop this song.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and you are watching Talking Joe. It's a sketchbook special edition, and we've not done one of these for a while, and we've not been live for a while, so this is a nice change of pace. Today, we will be joined by collector extraordinaire Almon Ellis, who is behind G.I. Joe Illustrated on Facebook. He is someone I reached out to quite a while back about coming on this, and it's finally happening because he's got an amazing collection of G.I. Joe artwork, and so definitely one of the key people to have on a show like this. So we'll be talking to him in a second, but I will not be doing it alone. Joined by my regular co-host. It's a real American Tim.
I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a real American Tim. American Tim.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers.
There he is, being stored underneath his desk in between these recordings. It's always on call. So, Tim, who is joining us today? A person that I haven't made a jingle for, so unfortunately you're going to have to sing something about them as we introduce them.
Are you a wise guy? Is their name Almon Ellis? How big is your sketchbook? It's Almon.
Here we go. Here he is.
Yes, I am a wise guy.
And we'll talk about exactly what that means in just a little while. Good to have you on board with us. Where are you joining? Oh, that's very topical. Sky Striker t-shirts.
Right.
Have you got your Hasbro Pulse delivery in the post today?
It's supposed to be here tomorrow.
Aha.
So I'll keep this t-shirt on until I get it. So hopefully it'll get here tomorrow.
Are you going to open it?
Yes.
And all the figures?
Yes.
Is there a place where the plane will go?
I'm hoping it'll look pretty good with the the stand that it comes with, where it looks like it's taken off. I'm hoping it'll look pretty good if I put that on the flag. So
nice.
That's my plan right now.
So you have a flag somewhere ready to go.
I do, yes.
Okay. But I mean, just one flag.
Just one, right? Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Did I already ask you where you're joining us from today?
I am in Olive Branch, Mississippi, which is just south of Memphis, Tennessee.
And your background is relatively, it's not giving too much away. But do you have a man cave for all of your cool stuff?
I do, and I was worried I wouldn't get a great internet signal out there, so I figured I better just stay in the house.
Excellent, good bet. So I think before we get all the way into your art, and I think we are sort of jumping at the bit to do that, why don't you give us a little bit of a background about you and your connection to G.I. Joe? Where did it all start? Was it the toys? Was it the cartoons? Was it the comics? Was it all three? What, when, where, how?
Well, it started when I was a kid, probably, I guess about 10 years old, and I was actually into He-Man first, and started getting more and more into G.I. Joe. I think I might have picked up a comic book first and really got into that. It was actually a Special Missions comic book, and I really enjoyed that. And I think I know the Devilfish was the first toy I got, and once I started reading the comic and reading the file cards, that's what really drew me in, and kind of hooked me. You kind of got a depth of the characters with G.I. Joe a lot more than any other toy I'd ever played with or collected. So that's really what drew me in.
Where were you buying the comics?
At a drugstore. We were in a really small town, and that was the only place around. The drugstore had kind of like a newsstand section and a spinner rack, and they would get G.I. Joe, and that's where I got it.
Was that the only comic you were picking up?
Yes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did that become a gateway? Did you read other comics later?
Well, yeah, but it was a good bit later. Like I kept pretty much just reading G.I. Joe. I guess I eventually got into X-Men, but yeah, for a pretty good while it was just G.I. Joe.
And have you kept on going? Have you kept current as it's gone out? It's come out. You're all the way up to date with issue 300.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, and that's kind of I guess came full circle because G.I. Joe's the only comic book I get now. So,
do you try and get all of the variant covers?
No, just because the comic book shop I go to in Memphis now, they don't get everything. So they pretty much anything G.I. Joe that comes in, they put in my box, but I don't get every cover to every issue.
So getting onto the art, how was it that you started the interest in actually collecting G.I. Joe art and commissioning pieces? And look, just by the Facebook group, it looks like the main interest is in like commissioned pieces, let's say.
Right.
So
yeah, it actually started when I went to the G.I. Joe convention in Orlando, Disney World, in 2004, and Devil's Due had a booth there, and Tim Seeley was there, and
we were just talking to him about that.
Yeah, he was taking
that very
commission.
convention.
Yeah, and I just kind of decided, everybody else is selling toys that I could pretty much get at any point, but this is going to be my only chance to get him to do some art, one of a kind art. So I don't even know how. I think I might have gotten like 8 commissions from him over that weekend. So that's where it started. Oh, and I also got Larry Hama was at that convention, and he did a Snake Eyes for me. And I'm not saying I was the first person to ever get him to do a sketch for me, because I know I wasn't. But at a convention, when I asked him to do that, he kind of acted surprised. And at that point, he didn't have like all his sketch stuff like he has now. And I asked him to do that in my sketchbook I had with me, and he kind of acted surprised that anybody would even ask him that. But he's like, sure, yeah, I'll do that, and just did a little head shot of Snake Eyes with the word bubble with the dots, like it would, which is really cool. And then it kind of became a regular thing with him doing sketches at all his shows. So I would be interested if anybody has a sketch from him before 2004, just to hear, if anybody else had one before then.
I think 1 or 2 have popped up on Facebook from fans who got them from him like in the 90s or the 80s, like
right.
at a store signing. But in terms of the modern era of artists, convention sketches, and Hama after 2004, at some point bringing a clipboard, certain pencil, stack of paper, his sign, and like having a price, sort of list ready.
Yeah, right.
You might be the beginning or very close to the beginning of that.
Yeah, because he didn't even charge me or anything. He just, took my sketchbook and took him a few minutes to do it, and that was it.
That was the gateway.
Almon, are you seeing a difference in your then or now in convention sketches or commissions as opposed to original artwork for pages and covers? Do you also pursue that? Have you? Is that not interesting to you?
No, I have several. Well, I have a few original pages uh, like Herb Trimpe. I never was able to meet him or get a commission from him, so I've made it a point to try to buy a few original pieces from him. Uh, and then I've got a few IDW pages that I just happened to find that I thought were cool, but it's not something I really kind of seek out. But if I see one that's cool, I'll buy it.
And those pages, that's only from G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, so your original art collection of pages and or covers and also convention sketches is only G.I. Joe?
Right.
Okay, there's no like Punisher or X-Men cachet over here.
Nope. Everything's G.I. Joe.
I guess I said that wrong. Cash.
So let's get into it a bit. Let's Wide, before we get into your wrong one. This one. Before we get into the the bulk of the commissions and sketches, let's talk a little about this guy on the screen, Wiseguy. Can you tell us about this character and this art specifically on the screen?
Yeah. So Wiseguy is a character that I obviously just kind of based on myself, which the name originated with the Choose Your Own Adventure books back, that came out in the 80s. And I had a few of those when I was a kid. And one of the characters that you played in the book was codenamed Wiseguy, and I always kind of thought that code name was cool. So I thought it fit with a strategist, which is kind of the specialty that I had in mind for my character. So and also I'm an attorney in real life, and I was trying to come up with a way to kind of work that into a G.I. Joe character, and I thought a strategist type guy would be fit pretty well with that. And so I kind of had the idea in my head, and I was at a convention with Ron Rudat. I'm trying to remember which convention that was. I want to say maybe Atlanta, like the second Atlanta one, and I can't remember what year that was. But I just kind of gave him the idea of the character, and just asked him if he could just design just pretty much a new character that kind of looked like me. And that's the piece on the left there. That's what he came up with. And the one he did was just a pencil sketch. And then I got that, and I'd gotten to know Ryan Lord over the years, and I sent it to him, and he colored it and inked it and digitally inked it and colored it and sent it back to me. And once that happened, I kind of rolled with it, and Doug Hart did the painting on the right after I sent him Ron Rudat's sketch, and then I sent that back to Ryan, and he did like the packaging design around it, which was really cool. So that's where those two pieces came from.
Almon, I'm not familiar with Ron Lord.
Ryan, R-Y.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ryan. I'm not familiar with Ryan Lord, who is inking here and coloring.
Yeah.
Where did you find him? What does his work look like?
So he's really, I guess, kind of started out as just a fan, and but he's a graphic designer, but he did all the early Marauder, the art for the Marauder line. I'm like the original 4 Marauder figures. He did all the art for those, and then just a few other things here and there. But I just kind of, like I said, I kind of knew him, so he's the one who did that for me.
Cool. That the date on that one on the left is 2017, by the way.
Okay.
And,
can you talk about
Doug Hart on the? I was going to say Doug Hart on the right is great as well. I hadn't realized that's who it was by. But do you want to sort of just, I guess, for the uninitiated, explain the significance of that artist drawing this sort of picture?
Yeah. So Doug did a lot of the packaging art after Guerrero stopped doing it. Doug,
May I jump in?
sure.
Garrido continued through the end, but he was no longer doing all of them.
Okay.
But
So-
yes, Hart.
Okay.
Doug Hart was in-house at Hasbro. Hector Garrido was an independent artist, and Hasbro he was more expensive because Hasbro had to use an outside agency to like get him and use him. And Doug Hart was just already there at Hasbro in Pawtucket.
Okay.
All right, back to you.
Well, just so actually, and that was another deal at the that worked out at the one of the GI Joe conventions. Somehow I got Doug's contact information. It was after, I guess, well, that was the last convention, I guess, in Chattanooga, where they presented the art pieces to some of the convention guy, the club guys.
Yeah, the three guys who were
Right.
most in charge of running
Right.
the club and the convention.
Yeah, and so I got Doug's contact information there, and just asked him if he'd be interested in doing one, and he was. So that's where that came from.
How what was the back and forth with Doug Hart like? I assume you talked to him on the phone and sent him a photo.
Yeah.
How long did it take to do the painting, or what else did you send him?
It was really, he got it done pretty quickly. It started off with a phone call, and of course then I emailed him the reference pictures, and he would kind of email me back some rough layouts. And he asked me what kind of pose. He asked me, he said it would be easiest if I picked a pose from like an existing card art that he could just kind of base it off of, and that's actually Grunt's pose from Grunt's card art that he based that off of. So
And then who did the where is the painting right now?
it's framed in my GI Joe room.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll try to remember to send y'all a picture of the framed version because it looks really cool.
And it's pretty big. The three originals that were at that GI Joe convention,
Right. Yeah, it is pretty big.
they're not like 8.5 by 11, and they're not like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're bigger than 11 by 17.
Yeah, just roughly thinking about it, I would say it's about maybe 20 by 12 or something like that.
And it is the explosion is there, and the black paint is also there, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So so you didn't just leave it at that with this Wiseguy. You went one step further, and you did something that I think a lot of GI Joe fans have kind of would have sort of thought about at one point or another. Tell us about then what you did next.
Okay. Well, so when I get something in my head, sometimes I can get pretty obsessive with it. So, I had the backstory for Wiseguy, and I kind of had a file card that I'd written, and and that file card kind of had the backstory of him, and I met Rod Wiggum at one of the GI Joe conventions, and we really hit it off, and he did a lot of other work for me, and at the convention, and we kept in communication, and he's done several more pieces for me, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to see if he'd be interested in actually doing a few actual comic pages for me. So I kind of wrote out this origin for Wiseguy, and kind of laid it out in a comic form, and asked Rod if he'd be interested in illustrating it for me, and he said sure. He didn't have much else going on at that time, so I touched base with Brandon Jarawa and Justin Bell just to kind of send them my story to see if not they didn't, just to see if they'd have any suggestions about it since both of them are writers, and they're like, yeah, that sounds really good. So I sent it to Rod and kind of laid everything out page by page, and he drew it for me, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. And then Ron Wagner is who did this cover for me.
How did you find?
Oh,
why don't we hover on Rod Wiggum for a moment?
Okay.
So
on Rod Wiggum, or
well, because because that's where the story was a moment ago. So G.I. Joe comics fans know that Rod Wiggum drew many issues of G.I. Joe, starting with issue 34, and then he came back to draw 1, 16, 17, and 18, and then he came back to do some covers at the beginning of the IDW run, and in the 80s and 90s was drawing a lot of comics. He did some Star Trek comics and some other licensed books, and sometimes, because I'm so into comic books, I forget about newspaper comic strips.
Yeah, he did a lot of newspaper strips.
Yeah, Rod Wiggum. I'm looking at today's Gil Thorpe, right? So that's Gilthorp. Rod Wiggum has been drawing the Gil Thorpe. This is a sports strip. Gil Thorpe plays sports. Rod Wiggum's been drawing the Gil Thorpe strip for years, and it's the sort of, we think of Charles Schultz and Peanuts, or Bill Watterson and Calvin and Hobbes, or other long-running or really famous strips. And there's this whole world of strips that have been running for a really long time. And if your local newspaper doesn't carry them, or if you don't read newspaper strips, like me, it might be sort of out of mind. But it is a completely different artistic exercise and job to draw something every day, like draw a couple panels of a newspaper strip every day, than to do whole pages of comics. All right, so that's just what I wanted to say about Rod Wiggum, right? Yeah. So if G.I. Joe fans, if you're thinking where's Rod Wiggum been? No, he's been around.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, like you said, when he was on, he did more issues of Marvel than anybody else. And, when I think of the Marvel G.I. Joe, I think of Rod Wiggum's art. So I was really happy when he was able to do that for me.
Yeah, I mean, not many people have been able to sort of create their own G.I. Joe comic about them and have it drawn by the most iconic interior artist of G.I. Joe.
Fascinatingly, this is not the only time Rod Wiggum has drawn a G.I. Joe comic book story for a fan. I don't have the specifics, because when I was chatting with him at, I think it was, I don't remember, maybe one of our viewers or listeners can correct me, but I think it was the second to last or third to last of the official G.I. Joe collector conventions. He was a guest, and he was just there doing sketches, and he was really nice. And he mentioned to me, and I think he had a page from, I think it was a 4 or 5 or 6 page original story he had drawn for a fan who had commissioned him. G.I. Joe fans, your dreams may come true if you.
I can add a little bit to that,
please.
So I don't know who commissioned it, but they got Brandon Jerwa to write those, and Rod Wiggum drew them. And somewhere along the way, something happened, and the guy either decided he didn't want them, or just I don't know what happened, but he never got them. And so Rod sold the pages that he did, and I actually have a couple of those pages.
I was half remembering that from my conversation with him at that convention, and I remember thinking, how amazing that this exists, how disappointing that the pages aren't all together, or to be able to read them all together in one go online.
Fascinating.
So you have the original artwork for these pages?
Yeah, I think I've got probably 3 or 4 of them, but it was like 2 different short stories that he did. One of them I think was mainly Scarlet, and the other one was Storm Shadow, and I think Budo was in it. And that's I know I've got a page with Storm Shadow and Budo. And I might have one of the Scarlet ones. I can't really remember it this time.
So these pages and also your pages, the Wiseguy story, these are standard 11 by 17 Bristol
Right.
with ink and no lettering, of course, because the lettering is done in computer.
Well, no, Rod actually hand lettered mine, but he lettered it on a different piece of paper and then pasted the word bubbles onto the original art.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about that cover then? Skip to the Ron Wagner cover.
So after I got the pages, I was like, well, you know, I've got these pages. I need to do a cover. So, you know, I said when I think of Marvel, the Marvel issues, Rod Wigham's the first artist that comes to mind. You know, and then probably Herb Trimpe and Ron Wagner are both way up there too. But Ron had done a couple pieces for me already, so I touched base with him and told him what I'd like, and you know, he was up for it, so he did that one for me. And Ryan Lord, I forgot to mention that Tom Feaster digitally colored the interior pages, and Ryan Lord colored the cover.
But yeah, let's go back a step. How did you connect with Tom Feaster to color these pages? What did he say? How did it go?
Well, Tom, I'd gotten to know him some, just going to comic conventions, and you know, he's a real friendly guy, and I ended up I saw him at probably 2 or 3 in a row. Back then he was going to a lot of shows. Now he doesn't really go to a whole lot, but I'd probably went to 2 or 3 in a row that Tom was at, and just kind of got to know him a little bit there, and would talk to him for a good while every time I'd see him, and we you know, became friends online, and we would talk online, and he, you know, he's in Atlanta, Rod Wigham's in Atlanta, and so they know each other, and he's a big Rod Wiggum fan, obviously, because he's a big G.I. Joe fan, and I showed him those pages and asked him, you know, if he'd want to color them, and he thought it was awesome, and it was very happy to do it.
I think it's worth pointing out that Feaster's colors here are a match for the original palette.
Yeah, and that was intentional. You know, we talked about how, you know, he said, you know, asked me if I'd want kind of a modern type color, or you know, to make it look like it was done back in the 80s, and I was like, let's do the retro looking color. So that's what he did, and that was his suggestion, really.
So that, you know, nowadays you can get 16 million colors out of Photoshop, and in the 70s and 80s, depending on which publisher or sort of where you are in that span, you can get 64 colors or 90 something colors or 120 something colors, depending on the percentages. And for much of comics history, it's just 64 colors. And so Hawk's hair here is 100% yellow, and then the floor that's a lighter yellow, that's, I'm going to guess, 50% yellow. And there are no gradients here, and there are, you know, all sorts of additional versions of colors that are not present. And so what it actually ends up looking like is not the original issues as they were printed, but the original issues as they are reprinted in the classic volumes. Where,
so, like the intro page there, if you read through that, it kind of explains that these pages are taking place between 2 of the Marvel issues, and I can't remember the actual issue numbers off the top of my head, but it's basically after the Battle of Springfield, where, you know, Cobra withdrew and kind of set it up to where it looked like G.I. Joe just attacked a actual American town, and Hawk was court-martialed. And the story is that Wiseguy was the JAG attorney that got appointed to represent Hawk at his court martial, and was able to get his name cleared. And Hawk was impressed with him and invited him to be part of the actual GI Joe team. So
I like the Joe vehicle cameos here in panel 3.
yeah. So that was all Rod Wiggum. He I didn't ask him to do any of that, and he just threw all that in there.
This is one of those things where realistically it might not be a vamp and there might not be 2 dragonflies, but fans want that stuff there. Another comment on the color, right? This isn't just the limited palette of 1980s comics. This is also a particular approach where there are a lot of Marvel books in the 80s where the sky is light pink, because that's a color that's not used anywhere else in the panel, in the page, and that creates contrast, right? If you have a character who's in a light blue costume and you put them in front of a light blue sky, you might sort of lose them, or the colorist might not want the character to, similarly with this light purple knockout on the water tower behind Wiseguy in panel 2. That's not actually the color of that thing, but we're used to reading old comics and we just accept it. Mark, can you go back to page 1 for a second? Almon, who's the guy on the right? Or is that anyone in particular?
Yes, that's actually Airborne, because Airborne's secondary military specialty is his attorney.
Very good. Very good.
I was going to add a couple of things. The cover that you've created, it has 52.5 because you were trying to remember what issue this was set at, aftermath of the Springfield invasion, and also you said that I could share this with our audience as well. So the PDF of this comic is available on the Patreon page. Unlocked, so you don't have to be a Patreon subscriber. Patreon.com/TalkingJoe, and scroll down to sort of mid-January, and you will find the PDF of that little strip. So a lot of fun to be had.
And then on the final page, the other 2 Joes. Are these favorites of yours?
Yeah, that's Roadblock, and there they are at the bottom panel. They are Roadblock and Falcon. Roadblock's one of my favorites because he's the only Joe from Mississippi, like I am. And then Falcon was my favorite as a kid, just because he looked cool.
And your story with Wiseguy didn't quite end there, because I grabbed this one as well. This is Anitho Diaz's interpretation of the character. And in Untold Tales, issue 276, lo and behold, who is being killed by Scarlet in a fairly gory way with a shuriken to the head?
Yeah. So Anitho, we kind of started talking. He made a post online one day saying he needed some or would like, he's in Brazil, so he doesn't have access to everything we do up here, and he was needed some, I don't even remember what it was now, but it was one of the toys that he was wanted just to have a reference to draw it with. And I sent him a message like, yeah, I mean, I can send you whatever you need. And so I sent him, like I said, I don't remember what it was now, but it was a few figures. And then later on, the classified line started, and like the deluxe Snake Eyes, he really wanted that and wasn't able to get it in Brazil. So he asked me if I could get that for him and send it to him. And I was like, sure, yeah, And what we had been doing is he would just pay me with commissions. He would just send me some art commissions, and I'd send him whatever toys he was looking for. And that went on for a while. And that Wiseguy that you showed a couple slides ago, that was one of the ones he did for me. And then he messaged me and said, I've got an issue coming up with some background characters, and he said, uh, I could make one of those look like you if you want me to. And I was like, yes, I want to.
And he didn't mention throwing star to the head.
No, I did ask him, who else was in the issue, and
he said someone with throwing stars.
well, at that point, Snake Eyes was dead, and he said Snake Eyes, so I just assumed it was Sean, the Sean Throwdown, and then it turned out it was a flashback story with the actual real Snake Eyes and Scarlet and Stalker, and I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. So that was one of those experiences that I just kind of lucked into.
And do you have the original art to these pages?
I don't have the original art to that, because he said he had a buyer that was going through his agent that was just buying every page to every issue, and they couldn't split anything up. So I didn't get a chance to buy the original art, but I'll
you if you are perhaps the first person in the modern era to request a Larry Hama convention sketch, you are one of only two that we know of fan collectors who appear in an issue of G.I. Joe, and are certainly the only one who's killed. So maybe that honor can sort of take the place of one more piece of art.
I will happily take that and be very happy with it.
Mind you, one of the other people that appears in the book is John Thurman, and while I don't think he appears is killed in G.I. Joe, he is killed in Batman by Tom King. So
right. But I was also I was forgetting about John Thurman. I was thinking of Chuck Costas in Devil's Due 21, a smaller appearance, but.
And Russ Heath appears in Rush Heath. Appears as an SAS agent in the latter era of IDW, written by Larry Hama as well. Let's get into some of the commissions proper then, and what we try and do. I've not covered up any of the signatures, so it might be a bit easier than normal, but I think Tim always tries to have a little guess as to who the artist is when they first pop up.
This is Mark Pennington.
It is Mark Pennington.
That's incredible. Pennington is so great with shadows and like his characters have a lot of presence and menace. There's a lot of atmosphere here, and it comes not just from the shadows and the poses, but there's a subtlety in sort of everyone's head is forward and slunk down a little bit, and there is a great variety of textures here. There's wood, there's grass, there's fabric, there's muscle, there's just sort of shadow, and Maverick's here. I was looking, I was counting, and I only got 5. Maverick is here, not hiding, but not popping out so much in the bottom center. How did you meet Pennington? How did this come about?
That was at another G.I. Joe convention. I met Mark, and one thing about my sketches, I basically I knew I had to narrow it down in some way, but it kind of got out of hand anyway. But I was just going to focus on characters from 82 to 88. Because that's really, once you get past 88, a lot of those characters didn't really ever get any characterization in the comics or anything else. So I was focusing on just 82 to 88, and eventually I just decided, well, let's try to get at least one sketch of every character from 82 to 88, and I wanted the artist who sketched the character to have some kind of connection with what they were. With their art that they were doing for me, and Mark was one of the designers for Battle Force 2000, so that's what I got him to do for me. And he's done some other ones too for me of some of the other figures that he's designed.
Pennington is a painter. He's not just a toy designer and comic book inker. He's also a painter, a fine arts painter. And what's interesting about this piece is that it's working with ink washes, right? Like if you were to treat this like a comic book cover or a pinup, you might open it up in Photoshop and darken all of these medium grays and dark grays until they're pure black, and then color it with a certain approach. But if you look at, for example, the sort of light and medium gray on the very bottom, or can you go in near Pennington's signature? You know, the cast shadow underneath. Oh, help me out. It's Dodger on the right. So who's on the left?
I'll tell you when it comes back up.
Blaster,
I think.
Blaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the shadow under Blaster, like my brain is saying that wants to be pure black, even though it's like a medium gray. And then I look at the boots on the right side here on Dodger's boots, and I think, oh, okay, well that's sort of the same gray. Does that also want to be pure black? And so this very much operates as a drawing that is not immediately sort of expecting to be or demanding to be colored. Like this is an ink wash, you know, like if you look at, you know, Tim Sale's original artwork for Daredevil Yellow, it's like, or like the flashback pages that Jim Lee penciled and watercolored in Batman Hush, the like 2 pages per issue that Scott Williams doesn't ink. Like those are meant to have a different presence. So there's a different atmosphere here, in addition to all the posing and the textures, because of the actual inking. Pennington is so good.
Yeah.
Next up, this is unmistakable, I think. But do you want to say it out loud anyway, Tim?
Oh, this is Michael Golden. And because there's that movie insignia on his shoulder, this is more recent.
Ah, yeah.
Right.
When is this from?
This got that from a comic book convention in Little Rock. I mean, it's probably been about 10 years ago, I'm guessing. And I touched base with Michael's agent before the show, and because you know I knew he was going to be a guest at the show, and asked if I could get on the commission list, and he did a Flint and a Lady J for me, and yeah, they turned out really great. I met him at the show and picked him up there.
I think I said this a year and a half ago when we last did a live stream episode with some Golden art. There is nothing like a Michael Golden drawing of a character like this. He's done it with Punisher. He's done it with, well, it's mostly Punisher, but sometimes it's Snake Eyes. But a character who's got a lot of gear, right? Like Flint's got 2 belts and he's got straps and he's got pouches. Golden is so masterful at delineating all of these different shapes and textures, and you don't get lost, right? It's like, no, I know which are his fingers and which are part of the gun, or you know, I know what's camo on his pants and what is I don't know, like a pouch on his belt. Golden, and to watch him draw, he's not sketching stuff out. He's just drawing straight ahead. Like he already sees it in his mind. And like it's already on the paper in like an invisible ink that only he can see. And then on top of this, like, sorry, the pose is so, like, the actual composition of this drawing, the pose is so cool. Like, there's all this attitude, right? It's emphasizing one side, the shells popping out. It looks awesome.
Almon, did you see him draw this live, or was it?
No, I didn't get to see him actually draw it. So he did it beforehand, which is why it's a lot more detailed and
Yeah,
it looks
it's a
better
bit
just
more
a
polished without-
normal convention sketch. He got to put a lot more time in it.
Tim, to your point, would he typically work in pencil and then go over the inks, or do you think this is straight to ink?
He drew a Cobra Commander for me, not detailed like this, a like live convention sketch 15 years ago. Excuse me, at a convention where no one was in line to see him, which puzzled me greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked in pencil, but I think he was doing sort of the like loose figure in pencil and not all the details, if I recall.
And I don't have that piece where I can look at it right now, but off the top of my head, I don't really remember seeing any pencil lines on it. So it might be all ink.
Or his penciling is his penciling and inking are so precise, he's covering up precisely every pencil line, and there's sort of nothing left to erase.
Or at home as well, there's the option then to do the pencils and light box over the top of it in ink.
That is true.
So
I'm certain Golden would never do that. Because some of the light boxing is because an artist wants sort of two versions or is worried about a mistake. And Golden when he draws is never worried about making a mistake because he almost never makes mistakes. Like I have a Golden Punisher cover, and there's a tiny bit of whiteout on it, which I don't see on Golden covers. And this sort of like famous funny anecdote is that at Marvel, one of his covers was almost thrown away because someone thought it was a stat, a like full-size high quality copy, because it didn't look like the original, because there was sort of no like different reflections from like this kind of ink or that kind of ink, or ink with whiteout, or like a little bit of pencil left over, a little bit of blue pencil. It just looked, you're like, wait, is this actually
too perfect? Yeah. Yeah, let's see what's up next. Here we go. Another of the greats.
Zek. I'm not looking. I see there's a signature on the bottom right. I'm not looking. I'm just looking at those Zek eyes, and I'm thinking, oh, that's Zek.
Yeah. And this
it's
actually
it's the kind of the worry lines on the forehead that don't do it for me.
This actually came from that same show in Little Rock that I got the Michael Golden pieces from, but I wasn't able to set it up with Zek beforehand. So as soon as the doors opened to the convention, I got to his table and got on his commission list, and I was like maybe the third one, and he still wasn't able to finish it just because he had a steady line of people come to his table. And
right.
Actually, Tom Feaster was at that show, and Tom said, "Oh, well, we kind of know each other," and Mike said, "Well, I'll finish it up at home, and I'll give it to Tom, and then Tom can, get it to you later." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that works great, because I definitely want it." And he gave it to Tom, and then I kind of had to fight with Tom to actually get it from him because he wanted to keep it. but he eventually handed it over to me.
Zek,
right, I think, no collection complete without a Zek. That's what I was going to say.
Oh yeah.
It's funny because when I think of Mike Zek, I think of the furrowed brow of Frank Castle, the Punisher. I think of the light source of a pistol or machine gun from a Punisher or a G.I. Joe cover. I think of the like high drama of his 4 Batman covers from 10 Nights of the Beast from around issue 416. And something that I sort of like think of much further down the list is how well Mike Zek draws clothing. And just even here, the lines on under Roadblock's knuckles, just the crease lines on the gloves, and just the Mark, can you close up on the bottom left quadrant? So that larger pouch that's on the bottom, I guess there's only technically one pouch, right? this pouch on the bottom. You know, like no one wants to draw pouches. That's not the. I mean, maybe Michael Golden wants to draw pouches. Let me phrase it.
Playfield.
Many
That's what I was
artists.
thinking,
I'm going to avoid that go-to joke, but pouches are, you know, it's like the least interesting thing, right? It's not like the cool pose. It's not the like the expressive hands or the like the big eyes or like the snarling open mouth. And look at this overlap here, where above these two snaps, there's this like curved line that goes down, and so that the top of the pouch can go sort of past it, behind it. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 lines that end on the right snap, just to sort of say, like, this is leather, this is soft. This isn't like the Stardust or Pocket Patrol. This isn't like hard and at a right angle. This isn't like smooth and flat on the top and smooth and flat on the front. This is like concave. It pushes in. It sags a little bit. And you know, it's like Zek's not thinking about that, just doing it because he's just that good.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a harder one to guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say is this, it feels like Kuber Bayal or like Pat Quinn. Oh, Pat Quinn did Pat Quinn do some of Joe Declassified?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So yeah, Pat.
Yeah, tell us about this one and the choice. Yeah.
Pat's one of the ones where he didn't do a whole lot of G.I. Joe, just that Declassified miniseries, and which it only had the characters from 82 in it, the original lineup.
Don't forget Chuckles' cameo.
No, that's right. So I said I try to get each artist to have to do characters that they have some kind of connection with, but Pat did. I can't remember which one he did. I think he did Zap for me out of the original lineup, and it was so cool. I said, I've got to get some more from you, and I ended up just picking one character from 82 all the way through 88, and getting Pat to do them. And his commissions are some of the funnest ones out of my whole collection, because he puts them in a scene where it's like a story in the piece, and they're most of the ones he did are like pretty obscure characters like Lightfoot, and he was able to. This one is really cool, and he also did a barbecue for me where barbecue. He's just out by like a grill in the backyard drinking a Yojo Cola, and he did a slipstream for me where he's in the cockpit of the Conquest, and you could see a Rattler in the background that he just shot down. He's like flying off. He's done some of my favorite pieces that I have.
This is really lovely for two reasons. One, in and of itself, this is a gorgeous piece with a great pose. And it's also funny because, it's funny because he's smiling. He's got thumbs up. He whatever he's doing, he's successful. He's diffused the bomb. But there's a joke in here, which is that he has to duck down to come through this doorway. And so that informs the whole piece, right? This isn't like a big, like chest out Superman, like in front of the American flag pose, or Lightfoot chest out in front of the American flag. This is like a little bit of sneaking and a little bit of relief. So this is not this is a commission, this is a pinup, but this is an illustration. This is a drawing that tells a story, right? Because the door says danger. We see the yellow and black diagonal lines, which also means danger. There's a doorknob. There are bolts on the door, which means this is some kind of metal door at minimum, blast door at maximum. And then technically, all the spotted blacks and the feathering on the right side of the helmet, that cast shadow just to the right of his goggles, but the cast shadow on his shoulder, under those grenades, the grenades themselves. This is the artistry here is so great. It's really lush, and I don't love the Devil's Due declassified 3-issue miniseries, and I don't remember of the various artists who worked on it whose work I like more or less. But when I think of that miniseries, I don't think, oh yes, I love all of the arts in that. So what a gorgeous sort of reset for me to see this, like Pat Quinn working in pencil and ink. I'm positive that miniseries was pencils only, and there were several artists. It might have been a rush job or whatever it was. But looking at this, man, get Pat Quinn back on G.I. Joe.
Like I said, I just love everything he's done for me. And he just went above and beyond. And with that the first piece I got was that, because obviously that was the character that he worked on. And I knew as soon as he sent me that one, I was like, I've got to get some more from you.
So great. Atkins. Again, I'm looking at the eyes. I'm not looking, not moving my eyes around. Robert Atkins.
Yeah. So I met Robert at one of the G.I. Joe conventions, and they all kind of run together at this point. So I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but I think I had worked this one out beforehand, and he did it, and I think he still hadn't quite finished it up, and he finished it up while we were at the show. And Robert's another one that I've been to several shows with, and we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit, and he's done a few more pieces for me, and I ended up buying his the old banner he used to use when he would do shows, because he ended up getting a new one, and I bought his old one from him. So in my G.I. Joe room, I've got this huge, it's the snake eyes standing over the pile of Cobra soldiers with the blood running down into the rain, like forming a Cobra logo. So that's
right.
hanging. That's hanging up.
Does it also say Robert Atkins, illustrator?
Yep.
This one feels a lot more like, finger quotes, modern comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
If everyone's thinking of like what Rod Wiggum is doing in his 3 pages for your story, he's using very few lines. And if we think of like the Zek piece or the Quinn piece just before this, there's more spotting of blacks, of like chunks of ink which are indicating shadow. And here Atkins has less of it. There's a lot going on in that leg on the left. There's a little bit, under his beret, and sort of where right by the knife on his backpack. But Atkins is more interested in line and less interested in shadow. And in that way, I'm putting far too blunt a point on this, but it's like more like Jim Lee, less like Jack Kirby or Mike Mignola. And I think because Atkins draws a lot of detail and draws a lot of lines, there's an association with him and G.I. Joe in a really positive way for fans. It's like, no, detail. It's like Atkins does detail, like particularly the Chuck Dixon issues for IDW before the Hama run, where it's like G.I. Joe's looking really modern. It's not looking quote old school.
Right.
Yeah, he's a stickler for detail. Get all of the details from like the original designs in, and then he'll just add some extra elaborations of his own for good measure most of the time as well. Who is up next?
This is Wiggum again.
Yeah, yeah. I think this was the first piece Rod did for me, which is, I mean, it's just great. I mean, you know, you got Ripper sitting on a barrel of like flammable jet fuel, and Torch is sitting there lighting a cigar right next to him, and they're eating the chocolate donuts and grape soda.
Yeah, Wiggum is
There's
looking
just so much personality to this. It's great.
Yeah, Mark, talk about that for a minute.
No, I think I'm just going to repeat the same thing. Just instead of just a typical cool pose of the Dreadnoks, we've got Ripper sitting on top of a flammable barrel marked danger with something leaking out of the bottom, and just to the side is Torch, with a Zippo lighter, starting up on a cigar. And then Buzzer's sort of just to the side with this goofy grin and the sort of the gap tooth. It's just instead of maybe a more splashy image style, people are furious coming at us at the audience. With lots of speed lines and energy. Just a character piece. Get them there and really just sort of just make us smile at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's a comparison, right? So a couple slides ago, we saw a Mike Zeck Roadblock drawing, and it's a great drawing. And Roadblock is holding his weapon and looking, intense, but he's not like thinking anything more specific or reacting to anything. And here, each of these Dreadnoks is focused on something. Well, in the case of two of them, specific, right? Torch and Ripper are focused on something specific, and Buzzer, I think he's just enjoying something off panel, but he's got a thumbs up and he's got a pinky up. So he is thinking of specific things, right? As opposed to like, I'm a tough Dreadnok, or this is cool. And isn't there a Mike Zeck pinup of these three Dreadnoks in yearbook 3 or 4?
Right. Yeah.
So like there's no, I'm not trying to put Zeck up against Wiggum, but in terms of sort of what we mean by personality here, it's like, this is a particular kind of drawing, and this doesn't quite tell a story, but it's getting in that direction, as opposed to what I'm remembering this Zeck pinup from yearbook, I think it's 3, where it's these three Dreadnoks and they're each sort of taking a step forward with their weapons, and they just look awesome. Mm-hmm. And that's enough. And I don't say that as any kind of criticism. But if you're, yearbook 3, you want to go full screen for a second? Yeah. This Zeck pinup that was published is awesome for other reasons.
That one.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. It just, they're definitely both great and both cool. They're just different.
Yeah, like this is not going to be a cover, and not going to be probably even like, I bet if Wiggum sent that previous drawing to an editor for a pinup, the editor might say, "Can I get something a little more exciting?" Right? But it's like, no, I'm a fan, and these characters are goofy. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron Wagner.
Yeah. So Ron, one of the things I was working on, so Ron's done a lot of stuff for me too, and I know I've got a really cool stalker from him, just because one of the main storylines I think of from Ron is the when Stalker, Quick Kick, and Snow Job were in the Gulag, and so I got a stalker from him. I've got a Lady J from him, and then the stalker and the Lady J are pretty nice deluxe pieces, and then I've got this hit and run because for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure it's issue 88 when Outback and Ripcord took the team of New Joes to like the little island that popped up about Cobra Island, and they Wild Bill dropped them off to kind of claim the island for the U.S. before Cobra could get to it, and it introduced Hit and Run, Shockwave. Wait, no, maybe not Shockwave. Hit and Run, Repeater, Hardball, and Charbroil, I think, were the 4 new Joes in that issue. And for whatever reason, that's always been one of my favorite issues. It was just a standalone issue, and I've gotten Ron to do all 4 of those new Joes on pieces like this for me. And Hit and Run's always just been a cool looking character. So I really, this is one of my favorites.
Ron, when he pencils,
Right,
oh, go for it.
I was going to say it's not a kind of, it's not a like a direct figure sort of like it's not direct representation of the Hit and Run from the toy as well, isn't it? It's got
yeah, I
got
think
some
he might have been
updates or
using the
personalization
modern
to the design.
Yeah, I think he might have used the modern Hit and Run for a reference on this one, which is fine, you know. But yeah, it's definitely different than the original figure.
When Ron
Or Tim?
pencils, I mean, and I don't mean the 80s, I mean now. His pencils and his inks can be tight, and it's fun to see in his sketches or his commissions where his stuff is a little loose, a little jagged, a little just a little, it's not even messy, but loose. And what he's done here with Copic markers, that's COPIC, Copic. These have been all the rage with artists doing a lot of convention sketches in the last 15 years, because you can get actually those are all Copic markers. All these yellow cups behind me. If you get the grays, you can get them in. Copic didn't invent this, but you can get warm grays and cool grays, and warm gray has a tiny bit of yellow in it, and cool gray has a tiny bit of blue or blue green in it. And what convention sketch artists will do is sometimes use the warms for like skin tones or like background, and then the cools for costumes, or maybe if they're drawing Iceman, like skin tones. Most of this is cool. I think almost everything on Hit and Run here is cool, except for the reflection in the goggles and maybe a bit of the gloves. And then the background, I think, is a cool. Is a warm, and it becomes so abstract as like woods, like forest stuff. I love it, because you're not going to get this on a cover, right? Like an artist doing a G.I. Joe cover is either not going to like try that, or an editor is not going to let them do that. Like this is that kind of sort of beautiful. It's not messy, but beautiful mess you get in a commission, in a sketch. It's like, no, I can sort of tell that those are trees.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
See who's up next. It's, more Ron Wagner, but in a distinctly different style.
Yeah. This was like I mentioned when I was talking about the Stalker and the Lady J he did for me, or more kind of deluxe type pieces that he did from home when that Hit and Run was just from a show that he was at, with Assembly Required, I think. And so like this Zartan, he was one of the ones that he did from home and sent me, and it's I told him I wanted Zartan, and I don't think I really said much more than that. But
you didn't say Zartan about to assassinate Serpentor?
I think I might have mentioned that, like that I really enjoyed his work on the Civil War, the cover of Civil War issues, and I guess he kind of took that and came up with this. So yeah, this is really cool.
So this is all ink and not Copic marker.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go in closer, Mark?
Yep. Sort of a lot of interesting sort of suggestion of burning vehicles there in the background, and tires and
I see a star.
tank
I think I
Yeah.
see an implied
tank
GI Joe
treads and
vehicle.
stuff.
Yeah, it looks like a all striker to me back there.
Oh, have you've lost my screen a second there. There we go.
Sorry, I've still got you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's sort of the suggestion of the roll bar on and the gun on the top of the all striker. I think you're right.
Oh yeah, and then the tire.
It's very suggestive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's so cool about looking at original art that is different from reading a comic book is reading a comic book. There's a layer or two or three between you and the art. There's the color, there's the printing, and there's the word balloons and the act of story and reading. Like you're falling into it, and even if you're enjoying the drawings and the shapes and the lines, you may not pay attention to them because the sort of the movie's playing in your head, right? Even though the panels are in front of your eyeballs. And when I look at original art, I'm reminded all over again of the vast variety of marks that the artist can make. So, you know, like the inking here on Zartan's knee, those are just little like jabby lines. And then he's doing a little bit of reflected light at the bottom of the knee, right where the top of the boot is. It's like the darkest part of the knee is those two curls at like 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, right? That sort of circle that he's almost drawing out of the knee. And then there are these larger shapes in the background to fill in all this ink. And then sort of at the edges or where he's getting closer to something, he's using a pen again and not a brush or a thicker pen. And there are people who know comic art really well who can look at a line and tell if it's done with a pen or a brush, and oftentimes I can't. So I think this is all pen or more pen, but someone better at this than me would know for sure.
Great. Let's see. Up next, I'll zoom in on the head to hide the suggestion of a signature at the bottom.
Shannon Gallant.
It's not as obvious. Yeah, there we go.
It looks a little different because he's inking,
but it's less obvious on this piece, I think.
Well, he's inking himself, and so he can do a lot of, and he's not under a crazy deadline, so he can do a lot more fine detail, like those very small lines all in the face.
Yeah.
It looks over line, so that's either printed blue line or a blue pencil.
Yeah, it's blue pencil. But yeah, Shannon's another one that
he always puts so.
But yeah, he's done several pieces for me as well, because he's another one of those that. Well, obviously, I was a big fan of him just from the all the issues that he did. But once he did one for me, I was like, all right, yeah, this is great, because he's another one that just went above and beyond on how much detail and background he put into them. So once he did the first one for me, I knew I had to get several more. So he's done one from every year from 82 to 88 for me too.
There's
he always puts so much thought and personality. Yeah, there's it's not just a generic hero pose or whatever. He's hiding behind that tree trunk. He's got this shovel in his hand with a suggestion that maybe that could be blood all over the shovel.
Right. Yeah.
All of that foliage. It's sort of great personality, great storytelling, and just prompting a whole thought process about the scene and what it represents.
Right.
And the compositional elements of the grasses on the bottom left and right and then the sort of tree ferns on the top right and top left. He's doing really great work here with negative space and foreground, middle ground, background. Like this is really satisfying in black and white because the layers and the spaces of it, I mean, distance from the camera, are so thoughtfully separated. And even small details like there are 3 little rocks sticking, or dead tree roots sticking up out of the water, and then there's this tree root in the foreground. There's all this extra
cypress knees.
Okay. There's all this extra stuff happening here that, if you said to someone, muskrat in the swamp, they could draw a lot less.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And all these leaves and grass, definitely a brush and not a pen.
And these sketches were typically done by post again, were they?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would communicate with him through email, and we'd work out, and I would basically just tell him the character, and he would send me something like that back. So yeah.
Did you ask him what he had done with that entrenching tool?
No, I think we better just leave that to the imagination.
Excellent. Okay, who is up next? Zoom in to hide the signature. Again, not one that I'd guess. Do you want to give a hint from to Tim what the connection to G.I. Joe is for the artist?
Well, so he did the Devil's Due Special Missions Manhattan that Tunnel Rat appeared in.
Oh, wow. I don't have a guess. I have not read that issue.
It's not going to help Tim.
Jeremy Hong.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is one of those compositions where look at
the detail on this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the hatching on the knife, and then the jacket.
The hatching on the knife, yeah. That's like going in. Yeah, the more I look at this one, the more I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a lot of detail.
There's a real separation between the figure and the ground here, where Tunnel Rat, like, we believe that he is in this tunnel, but he is close enough to the camera, and he is the foreground. There's nothing else in front of him. There's nothing between the camera and him. And it's not like he's like grabbing, that pipe. So it would be easy to sort of overly separate him from the background, as if like the background is like a poster behind him that's like taller than him. But because of all of the shading and all of the tonal work, he absolutely feels integrated with this space, and the fact that he's sort of his pose agrees with it. Like, I don't quite know if the sort of ceiling clearance here is tall or not, but he's leaning forward and sort of scooching around as if this is either a place of danger or of confined space.
Right.
And this is a question less about this specific piece, but more generally now. So I think a lot of these ones that we've been looking at have been sort of done at home, so presumably on a separate artboards. So did you have like do you collect, the way you collect these at home? Do you have like an art folder and then like a separate dedicated sketchbook that you bring along to conventions?
Yeah, I definitely have a folder that all these pieces are in. but I do have a sketchbook that a few things are in, but for the most part, they're all on they're all standalone pieces that aren't in an actual sketchbook.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Where
Interesting.
where did you meet Jeremy Hahn?
I actually just I knew who he was from the issue, and I found him on Facebook and just sent him a message.
Cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's great, and
And that's
yeah,
a lot of
sometimes
these pieces. That's how they came about. I would just once, like I said, I wanted to try to get at least one piece of every character from 82 to 88, and some of them are pretty easy to figure out who I wanted to do what character, and then some of the more, not that Tunnel Rat is obscure, but some of the more obscure characters were kind of hard to find a artist that had a connection with that character. So I would, you know, some characters that just had like one appearance, Devil's Due worked a lot of characters in. So even though some issues might have only had that character for, one page or one panel, even, that's who I would find to do that character.
Is this weapon particular to a figure?
I don't think so. I think that's just something that he, I'm assuming he just found a reference for it and thought it was cool.
Okay. I have always loved the original Tunnel Rat figures machine gun, and as kids, my brother pointed out to me that a guy sneaking around
Right.
tunnels would not have a giant machine gun with him.
Very impractical, yes.
And he would just have a pistol,
It really
or like
is. It really
like
is.
a pistol and a flashlight.
Yeah.
It's like what is it? Is it the Nom number 9?
Let's give the tunnel guy the biggest gun out of the entire Joe team.
Maybe it's 10.
So we've got a few to do, approaching online. So let's keep on skipping through. This is lovely. And I love a cover that's got someone jumping into arrows, and there's been a few of them. Cliff Chang did a great one with Wonder Woman.
I don't have a guess here. Oh, cool.
Is Will Rosado.
Yeah, so Will, it was really cool.
Not only worked on G.I. Joe towards the end of the Marvel run.
Yeah, and once we got towards the end of that Marvel run, and especially the IDW run, you were starting to see artists who were fans of G.I. Joe, and Will is a huge G.I. Joe fan, and so he's done a few pieces for me, and this is even I really like all the ones he's done for me, but I guess I would have to say this is my favorite.
The all the shadows. Shadows are so great. There's so little light hitting these characters. There's so much black ink on the right side of this piece. Wow.
This is really great.
Yeah.
And and his stuff generally is this very, very soft, clean style. I don't know if soft is the right word, but you kind of get what I mean. And
crisp.
Yeah, his work on the on the IDW, it was Cobra Files, was it, or something? It was one of the later series.
He did that wrap up. He did that epilogue issue with Hawk and Timber.
Right. Yeah. Where they were up at the cabin and got attacked by vipers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think he did some work on just the regular G.I. Joe, IDW G.I. Joe.
Yeah, maybe it was the regular.
I know he did a few covers, and it might have been variant covers, but there's one I'm thinking of in particular of Roadblock that he kind of recreated for one of my commissions that he did for me. But yeah, that's just the one that pops in my head.
let's move on to the next one. I don't need to hide the signature too much because it doesn't give an awful lot away. But this is such
do
a
not have a
different
guess.
style, and it looks great. Tell us about this one.
Drew Johnson.
Yeah. So Drew did some covers for the IDW series, and Lady J was on several of the covers that he did, and his style on the covers is really a good bit different than what he did on this piece. Yeah, I think he said he did this whole piece in just ballpoint pen.
Ballpoint. Wow. It looks like
I can I can believe it
looks-
because it's got that softness. Like you can sort of feather and render in ballpoint.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was that. He's another one that I just reached out to on Facebook, and a lot of times you'll send somebody a message, and understandably they'll be too busy to do it, but they'll just say, keep trying me. And so that's what I did with Drew. Every few months I would send him a message, and it took a few tries, but finally he was like, yeah, I've got a little free time. I'll do one for you. And like I said, this style is really a lot different than the covers that he's done. And so when he showed me this, I was pretty taken aback by it, and it was, just really great.
It's really quite striking.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that, the detail that he's managed to pack in, but at the same time, it being, this singular image in itself. Great. I love this one.
Yeah.
It's you can see the signature there. It's quite big. Bob Camp.
Bob Camp is
worked on some early.
Sorry, go for it.
They worked on some early Joe. He did at least one cover, I think. I was looking at some work that he did around about issue was it 35-ish? One of the issues where there was like 3 stories going on at one time, where there's multi credits. His name is in there.
Right. Yeah. I the one that gave me the idea for this piece. And again, I don't remember the issue, but it was the one where they're in Alaska. It's Snowjob's first appearance. It's Doc and Gung Ho's first appearance too, I think. But when
11.
Yeah, I wanted to say 12, but yeah, I guess it's 11. But yeah, when the Cobra is attacking the Alaskan pipeline, and so Bob Kemp did the cover for that issue, and some of the interiors too.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, this is another one that all I said was just could you do Snowjob for me? And that's what he sent me back. So
This is Copics. You can see the worms like in the in his fur hood, and then the cools are like in the goggles right below his face. Bob Camp and Larry Hama have known each other a long time, and I wonder, I don't remember exactly what Bob Camp was doing sort of in illustration and comics in 1984 when this fill-in issue 35 and 36, these 2 issues with a bunch of artists, and Bob Camp is one of them. But I have wondered if this is one of those cases where someone at Marvel, the editor Danny O'Neill or the writer Larry Hama, knows that the book is behind schedule and says, who do I know who can draw a couple pages this week? Or like they're having lunch and someone walks by. It's like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Can you do a couple pages for this Marvel book that's behind schedule?
Yeah.
Or someone walks into the Marvel office. This did happen a lot in the 80s. And sometimes it was younger people sort of breaking in. And sometimes it was just people checking in. It's like, hey, do you have any work? Like, yep, we have an issue of so-and-so that's behind schedule. Can you draw half it? But to be fair to Bob Camp, he is much better known in the world of television than he is in comics, because he, along with John Kricfalusi, were in charge of Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
And when the other guy was fired by Nickelodeon, Bob Camp took over the show as executive producer, or sole executive producer, or lead executive producer. And so, like when I'm flipping through the my back issues and I see his one cover for the Nom, I think, neat, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, the world doesn't know this guy for that.
Yeah, that was my thought. Sort of seeing his name in the books. It's like this GI Joe artist, that the Ren and Stimpy guy, is that, or is it just the same name?
It is.
Yeah.
It is that guy.
Right.
And what that means, that he draws really well, because you had to be amazing to like do the cartooning that was in Ren and Stimpy. Like, this is a guy who can draw in many styles. This is a guy who can work in many modes.
It's a great piece. I love it. So we've got 2 more. I don't think that Tim will guess this one, so I will.
I actually was going to guess.
Screen.
I actually was going to guess Klaus Schwinski, because this looks like his cover.
Well, yeah. So I got the commission first, and he liked it so much, he sent it to IDW and said, "Man, look at this." And they're like, "Yeah, we can use that."
So you got him the job.
Yeah. Well, no. He had done covers before this one, but I mean, he did this piece for me first, and it ended up being used for a cover.
Didn't he draw G.I. Joe Origins? Is it 10 or 11? The issue with
Beachhead.
Sorry. Is it with Beachhead?
Yeah.
Okay, right. But this cover right here, this was
something that came
much later.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah, this is like in the last 2 years.
But yeah, well, I don't know about the last 2 years, but the last 5 years anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, that origin story was what maybe asked him to do Beachhead for me.
Okay, yeah. And did he do the All Hail Megatron cover? Like the first All Hail Megatron cover where Megatron's planting the flag? You guys talk for a second about this art.
Okay. Well, Klaus is another one that I met through Facebook and just reached out to him, and he said he'd be happy to do a commission for me, and kind of sent me a few. Once I told him I'd like him to do Beachhead, he kind of sent me a few, maybe 3 or 4 rough thumbnail poses, and asked me to pick which one I liked best. And a lot of times, when you get a commission, they'll just do whatever, and it almost always turns out great. But Klaus is one of the ones who kind of he walked me through the process with him for getting my input on exactly what I'd prefer on some different things. And this was the pose we decided on. And he
it looks like this is pencil as well, right? The
right,
glaze?
yeah.
Klaus
it's a great
Schwinski
use.
indeed drew the not the design cover for Transformers All Hail Megatron #1, but the illustrated one, white background. Megatron's got a pike with Optimus Prime's head on it, and he's holding an American flag in the other hand. This is one of those artists who, after that one issue of Origins, I sort of put on a medium list in the back of my head, like, they should get this guy to draw the regular book. And I actually sort of thought when Untold Tales was announced, and it's like, oh, it's going to be sort of not fill-in artists, but single issue artists. I thought, oh, maybe that guy will come do an issue. And I would be happy to have him show up and do some more G.I. Joe work.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the last one that I've got queued up. It's a bit of a giveaway as to who it might be, but Tell us about how this one came to be in your collection.
All right, so Andrew did a commission for me of Hawk and Hawk and the MMS, the mobile missile system, and we did that one first, and they'll IDW would show previews of covers, several months before the issues come out, and this was back when Andrew was doing the covers, and they showed the preview for that one. And I mean, as soon as I saw it, I sent Andrew a message. I was like, "Do you still have this cover art?" And he's like, "Yeah, are you interested in it?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is the coolest cover I've seen in a long time." So this is, you asked me what if I have original pages and cover art. This is one of the few pieces of actual comic art that I have, and it's definitely a highlight of the collection.
I noticed that his signature is in the original and it's not in the cover. And I wonder, did he erase his signature before it was colored, or did someone later on erase? It's not like there's going to be a barcode or Spider-Man's head is going to go there. And that doesn't seem to be a place where you couldn't or wouldn't have a signature. And G.I. Joe covers do have signatures. So I wonder why the signature got removed.
I don't know.
I'm always wowed when artists draw American flags, because I think I can handle the stripes, but the stars, I would start to think something like, okay, if I could just get a CG model of a flag and do a screen cap and trace the stars in perspective and wrapped over a curl, then I know I could get, but otherwise that's going to take a long time. Also, and on a G.I. Joe cover, like maybe in a panel, you could get away with sort of a loose suggestion of stars, or you could do sort of circle star blobs, but on a cover, you're going to have to draw actual stars. You have to get it right.
Yeah. This just reminds me of one of those, like the Michael Golden pinups that you would see in the old yearbooks.
Yes. Yeah, this cover does indirectly recall Golden's cover to yearbook 2. And Mark, you want to read this comment?
So Diana speculates or thinks, with her insider knowledge, that the signature might have been sent after scanning it for IDW and before sending it to Almon. So that might be why it's missing from the actual published cover.
So the art, the signature is on the art, but didn't make it to the publisher. That's thank you for suggesting that, Diana. That's interesting and helpful.
And we have an afternoon from Penn's Toys afternoon, although we are just wrapping up. But obviously, you can watch this all the way back from the beginning when we're done.
Speaking of all the way back to the beginning,
of the arts.
I just wanted to do a quick sort of fact check. The piece a couple slides ago by Drew Edward Johnson, who did some covers for IDW. Is this Drew Johnson who drew Icebound for Devil's Due?
I don't know.
Well, suddenly I'm embarrassed because
It might be the same.
I feel like one of us should know. But it can be a fun, it can be a tough challenge when an artist either changes their name. There's some well-known people who worked at Marvel who got married in the 80s and changed their name, so their last name changed, or someone doesn't use a middle name or does use a middle name, and then years later they start or drop. So Drew Johnson, or to the two Drew Johnsons, if you're listening or watching this, I'm sorry we're not more confident here, but let's state in a general sense, there was a Drew Johnson who drew the second arc for G.I. Joe Frontline at Devil's Due.
Oh, okay.
restaurants. And
Yeah.
So, so I think we've reached the end of the art that you've given us to share, but that's not by any means the end of your art. So I was just going to give you the opportunity to promote your Facebook page if people
Yeah.
do want to come and sort of visit and see a little more.
Yeah, be sure and check out my Facebook page, G.I. Joe Illustrated, and there may be a better way to organize it all, but basically I've got, if you go to the Facebook page, G.I. Joe Illustrated, go to photos and click on albums, I've got an album for every year from 1982 to 88 with the characters that came out each one of those years. And then I've got another album for Cobra, which is all the years under Cobra. But yeah, definitely go to the albums on the Facebook page, and be sure and find the one from each year from Pat Quinn and Shannon Gallant, because you know, all these are my favorite. I can't say any of these are my favorite just because they're all my favorites, but you know, I've got a few pieces from Ron Wagner and Mike Zeck and Michael Golden that are all great. But you know, like I said, I got one for each year from Pat Quinn and Shannon Gallant, just because they just went above and beyond. And so be sure and check those out.
Almon, do you have commission jobs in process right now?
I actually don't right now. Probably the last thing I got was from Rod Wiggum. Some I guess I'm going to say it's a secret project, because you might see them in the future for something cool.
Are you? Do you have some conventions in your future schedule?
The last one I went to was the Memphis Comic Con, which was back last October. I don't have any strictly comic book shows that I've got coming up. I'm planning on going to Toylanta in Atlanta in March. But locally, really, the Memphis show is the biggest local one, and we really haven't had any G.I. Joe artists come the past, which of course they had took a couple of years off during COVID, and last year was the first year that they really got going again. And last year they didn't really have any artists that had any kind of connection to G.I. Joe, so I didn't get anything last year. But you know, I'm sure I'll find something to somebody. It'll be at some show not too far away sometime soon. I'll get something from.
I have two final questions. One, are you a wise guy? And two, what is the book that you were holding in your package painting?
That is my my strategy book. That's where I take notes and you know, brainstorm my ideas for missions and how to make them successful. And so yes, I'm a wise guy, and I kind of like that there's a double meaning there, that wise guy kind of means some kind of a smart alecky guy, which is kind of my sense of humor, and also kind of not to sound arrogant or anything, but somebody that's smart, I guess.
You
know?
are a wise
Right, exactly.
guy.
Yeah.
Everyone, he's a lawyer.
Well, you know, if I'm going to be the strategist, I have to know what I'm doing. So, you know.
G.I. Joe Esquire.
And Shane Simic joining in you on your collection. But
yeah, Shane and I,
and hopefully we should be to Shane again, not too far away to look at some more pieces from his amazing collection.
Yeah, Shane and I have a good time checking out each other's art.
Exactly. Sort of rare members of a sort of fairly small and very special club of So before we wrap up, Tim, remind us of where people can find you.
Video essays
when
on
you're not talking to
television
me about
and
G.I. Joe.
video essays on television and film at our YouTube page, Atomic Abe Productions. My brick and mortar comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I write about G.I. Joe at arealamericanbook.com.
And if you want to find out more about Talking Joe, the links are at talkingjoe.co.uk. But chances are, if you're on the YouTube page already, then you know some of the stuff there. Just click on some of the other videos. So thank you very much, Almon, for joining us, talking us through just a small element of your collection there today. And yeah, I do hope people go and check out G.I. Joe Illustrated to see a little bit more of it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me
with
on.
all that, we'll see you next time. And Tim can sing away as we say goodbye, if you like.
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Yo, Talking Joe.